What's up, hello? My name is Kate and I am a non-wool knitter and crocheter, which means that when I make things for myself, I don't use wool. There are a ton of reasons why people are non-wool crafters. For me, it is sensitive skin and the climate where I live. But for whatever reason that you choose to knit with non-wool, or even if you're just doing it for one project, welcome. I'm so glad you found me and thanks for being here. So it is February, and for the month of February, I have challenged myself, and hopefully you, to go through your works in progress pile and decide whether you are frogging or finishing those projects, and then to hopefully get a start on frogging or finishing. For my beginning of the month projects, I chose to finish some quick wins. So let's talk about those few finished objects. The first one was the quickest of wins. I had about half done on this Bodhi leaf washcloth. It is a washcloth pattern from one of the Modern Daily Knitting field guides, and I can't remember which field guide it is, but I'll put it up here and link it in the description below. It is a super cute washcloth. It is a really easy washcloth, and I think it's the leaf pattern makes it like just that much fancier than a normal square or rectangular washcloth or towel. And I've seen lots of people do this pattern as like placemats and coasters and all these cute things. I misspoke last time. I actually used Cascade Ultra Pima cotton yarn. Wow, y'all. But it has worked up great. It has worked really well throwing it in the wash and then in the dryer. So it's a good yarn for this. I imagine that any cotton would be pretty okay for this type of project. So I have two here that I don't know if I'm gonna save them for a possible gift someday or keep them for myself a little selfishly. But yeah, the Bodhi leaf washcloth, super cute washcloth pattern. And I finished it in an hour, probably even less. So yeah, quick wins for the win. And then the second thing that I worked on was my hazel tank. The pattern is by I Love Tinderbox, and it's a really cute tank, but I did work with a 100% linen yarn. And if you've ever worked with a 100% linen yarn, they are not always the easiest yarns to work with because when you're working with them, they can be a little stiff. Now, once you wash that baby, it is gonna soften up and it's just gonna keep continuing to soften up. So it's a little bit of like walking through fire to get to the end of it. But then you will be so pleased that you did it at the end because you'll have this super comfy shirt or, garment to wear. And last time, I wasn't sure if I was going to finish it or not. I went into it thinking, I don't know that I want to finish this. I've had it going for 2 years. I just don't know if it is bringing me joy anymore. And then I pulled it out of my project bag to show you all. And I was like, wow, I'm way farther on this than I thought I was. Maybe it is worth finishing it. So I gave myself a couple of rows to get back into the swing of things and decide if it was something that I really wanted to continue with. And I realized I was so close to the end, it wasn't worth it to frog it for me. So I finished it. And here is my hazel tank. Literally just off the blocking mats, actually a little bit damp, so I'm gonna throw her in the dryer when I'm done with this to get the rest of the way damp because that's fine with linen. And I did it with my swatch so that I know that it's gonna work okay. But the hazel tank is done. I made a few modifications to this pattern. The first being the length of the armholes. In the way the pattern was written and the way it worked out with my row gauge, it had longer armholes, which are trendy right now. So if that's your thing, like totally trendy. But it was not something that I wanted. I was hoping for a top that I could hopefully wear to work once it gets warm. So I decided to shorten the armholes. So it's a top-down sweater. I got all the way to about here, tried it on, decided I wasn't pleased with that. So I ripped it all the way back and started the armhole armhole shaping sooner on the garment so that the armholes would be a little tighter in, a little bit more of a tight fit. Really liked that. My second purposeful modification was on the lace here. The pattern calls for a picot with this last little row of lace. Picots are not my favorite thing. I worked a couple to see if I liked them, but I didn't like them necessarily in this yarn with this, the way that it had all worked out. So I decided to skip the picots and just do the one last row of plain old lace. And I'm really pleased with how it turned out. I think it still gives it a slight feminine touch without being like overly frilly, which is not my thing. So really pleased with that. Now, I did have an accidental modification. I wasn't counting my stitches. So I got to the point where I was ready to do ready to start the lace. And I finally sat down and counted my stitches, and I came up with 238. And I went back and looked at the pattern, and the large size had 228, and the extra large had 248, and I was smack dab in the middle. So I counted 2 or 3 more times, as we do as crafters, just to make sure that I don't just suck at counting. And sure enough, I was right in the middle. So it might be that I started adding some like waist flowy shaping that's in the pattern as an optional add-on and forgot to write down that I was doing that or where I was in that process. And so I added some of those extra things and just stopped. Or I just screwed up. Again, I hadn't touched this pattern since last summer, so it's very likely that I had started something and then not remembered that I was going to finish it that way. But I decided to just stick with the number of stitches that I had. I increased to what I needed for the lace repeat and called it a day, and it fits fine. So it's a modification that works for me. But I do find that with crochet, I have to count my stitches a little bit more often because I tend to add or subtract things, even as long as I've been crocheting. For 10 years now, I've been crocheting, and I still have issues with that. So an accidental modification that actually worked out fine, and I'll take it. Hopefully, I will have some finished object pictures of this up on Instagram soon, so go check it out to see the finished object on and how it looks. It is super cute, even though I haven't put it on since before blocking, but that was my hazel tank. So the other thing that was a little bit frustrating about working with this tank and why I psyched myself out on thinking it was harder than it was the yarn that I was using. I picked up some BC Garn Lino, again, 100% linen yarn. This is the color almond for this top. And I had used this yarn in a knitting project like 4 or 5 years ago and liked it a lot, which is why I got it for this crochet project. But as I was working with it this time, I noticed that the thickness of the yarn kept changing. So it's called a lace weight, like it's classified as a lace weight yarn, but I would have some sections that were like really nice and thin and lace weight, and some that got like kind of thick and bumpy and like squishy, if you know what I mean. And so that was really hard to work with the crochet. I don't know if it just happened on all of the skeins that I had, or if this is a common thing with the yarn and I just didn't notice it 5 years ago when I was knitting a shawl, maybe because the way that the yarn goes through my fingers when I knit. Again, a possibility, but something to know if you want to use this yarn. However, it does wash up beautifully. So, I recommend it with caveats, just like know what you're getting into. So, and maybe it would even be better if you can wash it somehow beforehand. I have heard of people doing that, though I have never taken the time to do it. But that might make it a little easier to work up as well. So all things to think about with any linen yarn, but especially the BC Garn Lino. All right, so those are the things that I finished. Next up, we have works in progress. So I also have a baby blanket that I'm working on. The Sliding is Fun baby blanket, and it's chugging along. It has not changed. The look of it has not changed. So I will show you that one again when it's finished because it's a baby blanket. The pattern is the same all the way through. Haven't touched my socks, and I haven't picked up the Rosewater shawl yet as part of my Frog It or Finish It because I was focused on the hazel tank and then also working on my Syngonium sweater. So Syngonium, here's where I'm at. I split for the sleeves, and I started sleeve number 1. I got all of the decreases that were called for in the pattern down, and then I tried it on and it was way too tight. The sleeve just all the way, it was way too tight. So I was like, okay, let me rip it back and wing it. So then I ripped it back, I started the sleeve over, and I've been winging these decreases all the way up. And I'm not sure that I like that either. So today I was digging around and I actually found a tapered sleeve decrease calculator online. So I am going to go use that after this, try it out on sleeve number 2 and see how I like that, so I can decide if I need to rip this one back out and do it by sleeve number 1, or if I need to rip out sleeve number 1 and follow the instructions I used for sleeve number 2, or if I need to rip out sleeve number 2 and follow these instructions. Again, all of this is because I am working with a much tighter gauge of yarn, or tighter gauge than the pattern calls for. None of this would be a problem if I was working at pattern gauge, but I didn't like this yarn, the Circular Bamboo, at that looser gauge. I just didn't like it, so I decided to tighten up the gauge, and so now I'm making a sweater that is a couple sizes bigger than what I would normally wear, which is why I'm having these issues with the sleeves. Nothing wrong with the pattern, gorgeous pattern. So yeah, the other thing I have to think about with the sleeves is that I have to get to, again, a decrease for the lace, because there's lace at the hem of the 3/4 sleeve. And so I need to make sure that I get to the right number of stitches in order to incorporate that lace at the bottom. I'll link the sleeve calculator in the description as well, because how useful is that? Who knew? That's my Syngonium. She's, again, chugging along. I feel pretty good about it. I will also say my mind trick to not end up on Sleeve Island, where I finish the entire body and then the sleeves are sitting there and I don't feel like finishing it because sleeves kind of suck. My secret to that is that once I reach the end of a skein on the body, so once I've split for the sleeves and I reach the first end of a skein, I put the body on cords or whatever. I put the body on hold, and then I do the sleeves first before I finish the body. It helps me to actually finish the sweater and not end up on Sleeve Island. Because I tend to, like I said with the hazel tank, I tend to psych myself out and think that things are harder than they're gonna be. I know that picking up like 6 stitches for a raglan sleeve is not gonna be hard. I've done it before. It is easy, but in my mind, I think, oh, this is gonna be way harder than I thought it was. So I need to make sure that I have time to really sit down and focus. And so I ignore that project for a couple of days while I try to find this magical focus time that I need to finish it. I don't need that magical focus time. I just need to sit down and do it. So again, patience. My goals for this year are patience with myself and patience with my craft, and making sure that I am doing things the right way and ripping them out if I'm not, or if it doesn't fit, instead of just saying it'll work out okay, because maybe it will and maybe it won't. But if I put the effort into it at the beginning and have some patience with myself, it will turn out great. So patience, and also stop putting things off. Don't leave it for future Kate. Future Kate isn't going to have magical focus time ever, either. Just do it. So just do it. All right. That's the Syngonium sweater. I have added something to my works in progress pile. And this one is one of those, it is similar to the Syngonium where I'm trying to get it right. I tried to take the easy way out, even though I knew that wasn't what I wanted when I first made it. And so now I'm going to fix that for myself. So this is my Azalea tee. The pattern is by Elizabeth Smith Knits. It is a bottom up, essentially dolman sleeve. So it's like a giant square with just some sleeve caps on it. It's a great pattern. It's cute. I like the garter. Sunshine. I like the garter lace that we get here. I like I love this yarn, but I don't tend to love short sleeve dolman fitting things on me because they either have to have really, really, really drapey fabric or a million inches of ease in order to drape well on my shoulders. I have broader shoulders, and so if it is not the drapiest fabric in the world, or 10 inches of ease, which I don't always want, it is likely going to stick off my shoulder like this. And I will look like I belong in 9 to 5 hanging out with Dolly Parton. Love St. Dolly Parton, but not the look that I want. So this has these cute little garter caps on the sleeves. So problem number 1 is that I don't actually like sleeves like this, and I should have realized that while I was working on the original thing. Problem number 1. Problem number 2 is that something is wonky with the way that I did the little garter stitch cap sleeve thing, and it keeps rolling. When I wear it, it likes to like roll in. So then it looks even more shoulder pad-esque on my body, because this little garter thing that is supposed to hang off the sides just folds in weirdly on my shoulders. I don't know if it's something to do with not picking up enough stitches or picking up too many, or the garter is too tight compared to the stockinette that's on the rest of the sleeve. I have no idea what is causing that problem. So I'm just going to fix it by adding 3/4 sleeves. The designer of this pattern, Elizabeth Smith, has an entire tips page devoted to the azalea sweater, including tips and like instructions for how to add 3/4 sleeves. So it was super helpful because this was also my first ever bottom up sweater. And I highly recommend, if you're doing a bottom up and it's your first time, this would be a great one to start with. She's also a genius at the shaping around the neckline so that it is super smooth and beautiful, and you don't have to pick up any stitches around the neckline to work it anymore. So great. Elizabeth Smith, the azalea tee, is going to get 3/4 sleeves. I should have plenty of yarn for it because I did have some leftover yarn from this project. And the yarn. The yarn is Hobie Acacia, which is a cotton and acrylic brand. And I love it. It is so soft. It is soft when you work it up. It washes fine. It is just gorgeous. I think it's a DK weight, and it comes in a lot of muted colors like this. I have also made something in like their green. They're like muted green. I didn't love that top. Again, I don't know. It was just not the right pattern for me when I made that. But this one, I think, with the 3/4 sleeves will be a much better fit for my sense of style. And a nice, like, spring sweater. Because it is a little bit more lightweight with that DK. Yeah, azalea. All right, so we've done finished objects. We've done works in progress. Last but not least is acquisitions. And I do have a small acquisition. We got a new yarn store in December in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I got to go visit it a few weekends ago. It's called The Bee's Knits. It is outside of downtown, and it is super cute. And I went and got these amigurumi minis. I don't know, they're even smaller than minis. I like micros, these amigurumi micro skeins, but they're the perfect size for making amigurumis. So let me be honest, I've never made an amigurumi. I got these to try and make myself make an amigurumi because it's on my to-do list of things that I want to try. Will having my little micro skeins help me with that? Who knows? We'll see. It's a fun little game. But I specifically got stuff to make a Gus Gus mouse. A few years ago, my best friend got me the Disney knitting book for Christmas. Tanis Gray has written a Disney knitting book, a Star Wars knitting book, maybe more than one Harry Potter knitting book. Lots of really cute patterns, and if you are a nerd like me, they are just so much fun. But there's a Gus Gus in it. So when she gave me the book, she was like, I want a Gus Gus. So please make me a Gus Gus, the mouse from Cinderella. I'll post a picture if you have no idea what I'm talking about. So I've had it in the back of my mind for a few years. I need to make a Gus Gus mouse. Now, knitting a toy is much more terrifying to me than amigurumi. So I decided to look for some amigurumi patterns instead, and sure enough, there are plenty of the Gus Gus, which is great. So now I have a pattern in mind. I have the yarn. I just need to actually do it. So yeah, that is the ultimate challenge there. But I've got the brown for Gus Gus's body. I've got the pink for his ears. He wears a yellow shirt. I think his hat or his shoes are blue. Can't remember. And then he has a red nose and then red hat or red shoes. I can't remember where the blue and the red go, but they exist in the Gus Gus character. Hopefully, I will actually get into some amigurumi once my frogging and finishing is all done and I can finally get her Gus Gus toy like 4 years later. Yay. Bees Knits, super cute store. If you're in Knoxville, I highly recommend going to it. For other non-wool crafters, they do not currently have a ton of non-wool yarns. There are a few in there, including all of the amigurumi minis, but there's not a whole bunch yet. So I asked, and she said that as the weather warms up, she's hoping to get a lot more non-wool yarns, some cottons, some linens, some silks. I'll definitely be heading back there as the summer warms up, hopefully in April or May, and I will let you know what I find. But that is all I have. If you have made it this far with me, thank you so much, especially as I am trying to figure out all of the recording and editing and all of that stuff. It has been such a learning experience to me just to even record things and figure out how to record them well. So I hope that you can see that I am trying to make progress. And thank you for sticking with me. And until I see you again in just a couple of weeks for our last February check-in for frogging and finishing, I hope you have happy crafting. Thanks so much.